Man, let's get into the conversation. The Cowboys have elected to keep head coach Mike McCarthy in his same position for one more year. Like, as you already know, Mike McCarthy has one more year left on his contract. And this is a conversation, this is a topic of discussion for not just Cowboy fans, but for sports fans in general. And your feelings may differ from the thought process of having Mike McCarthy at the helm, giving him another opportunity to, as they said, run it back. And I know that there's comments that Mike McCarthy made, and he talked about, we have a championship program, we just don't have the championship result. And that rubbed a ton of people wrong, to even utter those words of having a championship program and you haven't sniffed anything outside of championship level past the division round. And I get it. I totally get it. And of course, when you hear the names out there like a Bill Belichick, to some of you, that's an appetizing name. That's an enticing name. That's a name that you kind of feel like, well, I saw what he did for all of those years in New England and with Brady and the rings and the championships, and arguably one of the best coaches to ever roam the sidelines. I hear you. And then you think, oh, well, Jim Harbaugh, and you saw what he did at Michigan. They finally break through and win the national championship this year. And you know what Jim Harbaugh did in his past with the 49ers and took that team to some great heights. And they weren't able to win it, but definitely to some heights that was respectable. And it's always in the time of, I told you guys about the 5 stages of grief. And there's always this time where people get really emotional. Cowboy fans, and I don't follow everyone's fan base. I've been around sports my entire life, but I've been immersed into the Cowboys culture for a large majority of it these last 10 or so years. And Cowboys fans, they're an emotional bunch. They are emotional. They will get there. A lot of them jump over the edge. A lot of them teeter at the edge. A lot of them are pushing y'all over. And so I get it. There's these emotional decisions that you make. So when you hear that Mike McCarthy is returning as the Cowboys head coach, some of you are ready to have your pitchforks and your tiki torches, and you're ready just to burn down the star. And I mean, you've had it with Jerry Jones, and you've had it with the Cowboys franchise, and some of you, to me, on Twitter and on the other social media platforms, in the grocery store, some of you have run into me, and you have denounced your fandom. You have said, I denounce my fandom to the Dallas Cowboys. This is it. I am done. You were like Eddie Murphy in Coming to America when he was trying to get the girl. He denounced and renounced his throne for the ruling kingdom and the heir of Zamunda. And some of you have said, that's it. My granddaddy, my daddy, my uncles have all been Cowboy fans, and they have passed this on to me, and I have now renounced my throne. I have denounced my allegiance to the Cowboys. I think you're a bit emotional. I think you might need to take just a chill pill. I think you may just need to breathe. I'm not saying that you can't be upset. I'm just saying that some of you are absolute liars. You're just emotional right now. You're hurt. I get it. But once the draft comes, you'll be right back in. Once rival teams begin to start talking about your team, you're not going to side with Eagles fans. You're not going to side with Washington fans. You're not going to side with Giants fans. No, you're going to defend the star. You are. Just like if you were another team, you're going to defend your team, whether you like them or not. It's a toxic relationship that you guys continue to engage in and continue to renew your vows every single year to this relationship. And it's not going to change now. You may be a little hurt today. I get it. Respect. But you'll come around. But you're going to have to deal with Mike McCarthy at least one more year. And here's the thing. So I kind of broke this thing down, pros and cons on what I'm thinking about Mike McCarthy coming back to join the Dallas Cowboys as the head coach and the offensive coordinator. And the first thing is we talk about continuity, right? That's one of the pros. This unit stays together because what you guys do not realize is when you fire a coach, a head coach, you now fire just about all of his assistants, just about all of them. right? The thing that happened with Kellen Moore is that's very rare that a new head coach comes in, especially one that's the side of the ball that they're coaching, like their expertise. They're normally bringing in their guys or they're doing it themselves, right? So for Mike McCarthy to come in and then Kellen Moore be retained, that's a rare situation that Jerry Jones put Mike McCarthy in. And if you fire him, you fire the offensive line coach. And some of you might say, great, the tight ends coach, the receiver coach, the special teams coach, it just falls down the line. So now when you bring in the new guy, the thing that you now have to worry about is the language the same? Is the system the same? Are the players the same? And if there's players that you've been kind of developing to be next in line, are those players that you're going to actually be able to use? Because the new guy may not see him that way. So I think bringing Mike McCarthy back gives continuity. I think Dak Prescott has had his best football year in 8 years under Mike McCarthy. So there's somehow, some way, there's been a connection there. There's been a true connection between the two. And for Dak Prescott, and again, feel how you feel, he's coming back next year. They're going to give him an extension. They're not getting rid of Dak Prescott. They just aren't. I get it. I understand how you feel, and you want to just and time out on the Mike McCarthy thing. For those of you to think, because a lot of you have called Dak Prescott trash or the A word or a bum or whatever it is. Like, you can't have both. You can't call him trash and then say trade him for 2 first-round picks. Dak Prescott is not bringing you 2 first-round picks. And a lot of you are saying, burn up the whole thing, trade Dak Prescott and go move up and take the Bear spot. Let me just give you a brief summary of how this is impossible. Trey Lance is on our roster, the Cowboys roster. And the Niners moved up 3 spots. They gave up to move up to the 3rd spot in the draft to get Trey Lance. Now, they moved from 12 to 3. They gave up 3 first-round picks. 3 first-round picks to move from 12 to 3. So you're telling me that the Cowboys can move from 24th to 1? The Bears are going to want your grandkids' blood to move. If the Niners had to give up 3 first-round picks to go from the 12th spot to the 3rd spot, the Cowboys are going to have to – they're going to have to sacrifice – 5 is not enough. 5 is not enough. The Cowboys are going to have to give up a blood sacrifice. Your grandchildren. The Bears are going to want your grandchildren. If you're a Cowboys fan and you have grandchildren, they're going to want their young blood. Okay? It's impossible for the Cowboys to go from 24 to 1. It is absolutely impossible. And if they were to do that, they have mortgaged their future down the road. And some of you have come out your mouths and said some of the dumbest stuff that I've ever heard in my life. Like, some of you have actually said out loud in public that you would rather have a 2-15 season, a 3-14 season than going 12-5 and then potentially losing in the first or second round of the playoffs. Shut up. And I mean that in the most disrespectful way possible. Shut up. Shut up. You do not want the life of a 3-14 season. You do not want the life of a 2-15 season. Trust me, you don't want that life. Because what you're thinking you're going to get, there is no guarantees in that. Give me 12-5 and a playoff run, and every single year. If it's first round exit every single year, I don't care. I'd rather that, and there's hope that one day we'll break through the ceiling and actually win more games, than for sure knowing by midseason that I'm not going to the playoffs. That's a miserable life to live. And most of you who think that way, you need therapy. You should check your job's insurance if you have insurance, and you should check, does the local therapist take your job's insurance? Because you need to be in sessions. If you think 3-14, and 2-15 is a much better life than 12-5 and winning a division and having a playoff game at home with the potential to grow and go on. You're crazy. You're insane. Back to Mike McCarthy. So having Mike McCarthy in play gives you an opportunity for he and Dak to grow. Remember, this is his first year that he actually called the plays for the Cowboys. This is the first year. If Mike McCarthy is worth anything, like self-worth, if he feels like I'm really a good coach, then what he'll do this offseason is he'll self-evaluate. He'll reevaluate the entire offensive plan. And he'll go, what is the trend of the National Football League? Where do I need to look at? They hire these analytic people. They hire the next-gen people, and all the stats are right there at his fingertips. And I think the things that he'll see is, boy, when we were really good, we did X, Y, and Z. We had the shifts and the motions. We had route creativity. We had creative concepts. We found ways to run the football. We found the right runs to run the football. And I think once you collect all of that data and all of that information, I think Mike will then sit himself in a room with his other coaches, and they should be able to break this thing down and go, all right, here's what we're going to do. We know that we now have an elite top-tier wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb, and I put CeeDee Lamb in that category. We know that we have, and at least we have a very good quarterback. We have a very good quarterback. I'm not saying that Dak's elite, but I'm not saying that he's a bum. I'm saying that he's a good starting NFL quarterback, a really good starting NFL. He's a top 10 NFL quarterback in this league. Like it or not, feel how you feel, he's a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. You can win with that. You can win with a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. And then I say, all right, what can we add offensively? This is a heavy offensive line draft. There's some running backs in this draft, and you know that those things that you have to do. If you noticed in the NFL draft, in the NFL playoffs recently, there's running the football is important. While we may not give it much credence and much respect during the regular season, when you get in the playoffs, it matters. The possessions matter. The movement of what you're doing offensively, the rhythmic part of it matters. And so you develop that throughout the course of the season. So I think the Cowboys look at all those things, and now they're able to build on the things that they did well this year. And at the end of the day, if it all falls flat on their face, Mike McCarthy's under a 1-year contract. You start fresh. But you have a chance. You definitely have a chance in that. This is a player development. There are players on this football team who are taking steps, right? Who are. I think Jalen Tolbert will take another step next year. You'll have some other guys on this roster, and whoever else they bring in. I don't know who else they may bring in, but having the continuity allows players to take the steps, right? And there's young guys, and I'm saying Mike McCarthy on offense, but for all his coaching staff. There's tight ends like Stretch. They had the young kid that they had last year who I thought was going to have maybe a significant role in this thing. There's guys like Damarian Overshawn who they'll give some more opportunities to. I think Deron Bland, he'll take a next step next year. Jordan Lewis showed some promise the second half of this season. You'll get Trayvon Diggs back, and then you'll be able to continue to keep this stuff together and the staff together as best as possible if you're able to keep the retention of your coaches. That is important, to have the same and maybe not philosophy always, but to have the same voices, that they're hearing the same thing from the same people. It's important, people. It's like parenting. All right. If the message is 7 different messages to your children, you're gonna have a messed up kid, right? If one parent is saying this and one parent is saying that and the grandparents are saying this, who is this kid to believe? It's the same thing with coaching. You want to try to have retention because you want your messages to be consistent. I don't want a new philosophy next year because that means I have to change a lot of my thinking. I think what they have right now, and again, I know it's not where you want it to be, but if you weren't going to make the absolute change to the younger generation, which I didn't think Jerry Jones was going to do, I don't think he trusts his franchise to the hands of a 36-year-old. I just don't. I just think the old man thinks like you got to have in order to drive this Bugatti, you've had to have your license for a little while, right? You just couldn't get out of your learner's permit, and now all of a sudden you get the Bugatti. And that's why I thought like Bill Belichick and Jim Harbaugh, those guys were in play, because he wants a guy who has a little bit of skins on the wall, who's been around for a little while, that he can trust his franchise with. And to be honest, it's a lot to coach the Cowboys. Like it's more than what you just X's and O's. Like it's a lot to deal with, and if you're not ready, this can consume you. Like this, the attention, the constant, the media, the constant criticism, the constant, like everybody's watching, the cameras, like everything gets scraped through a fine-tooth comb. The players, like it's a bit much. The owner, how he feels about certain things, it is a lot. And if you're not fully prepared, it could be a lot for a 36-year-old, for a 40-year-old. And so if the Cowboys wasn't going to go through there, then I say stay right here. I say stay at home. Now the cons. There are cons. There are cons to this whole thing, with Mike McCarthy being your head coach. And I think one of the cons is, and this is key. I'm assuming, you're going to assume, we're all going to assume, and we hope that we don't make an ASS out of ourselves, that Mike is actually going to do the work of self-scouting. Because he may not. There are many coaches in the National Football League who think their way is the best way. And that I don't have to change. I don't have to tweak. I don't have to. I just need more execution. I need these guys just to execute better. And execution is always a part of the plan, but your plan also has to be able to keep up with the evolving changes of the league. And this league is changing, and you're seeing the guys who are having the most success, and you're not in that conversation with those guys. So one of the cons is that you could have a level of stubbornness in Mike McCarthy. You could have a level of, this is a guy who's been doing this for 25 plus years, and he feels that his way with the foundation of the West Coast offense and building off that is the way to go, and that nothing has to be changed. And if that's Mike McCarthy's thought process, then yes, we're going to be in the same spot we were this year, next year. The Cowboys will be in the same spot they were this year, disappointed, angry, frustrated with the early exit of the playoffs. Same time again, same bat station, same bat programming in January 2025. 100%. And that is a possibility, because we don't know the thought processes and the idea thinking for Mike McCarthy. And if that's what he's thinking, then sure, yeah, you bet your butt they will be. We can only hope and assume that he doesn't. The other con is, a coach on a one-year deal. That's all Mike McCarthy has now. Is he's a lame duck. He's a sitting duck. And at times you could kind of, your coaches begin to start looking at their other options. They're not fully committed to what we're doing here, because they know that, hey, if this thing goes sour, I'm jumping ship. I'm not the captain. I don't have to go down with the ship. I'm looking and working some back channel things in the middle of the season to make sure that I have job security elsewhere. Also, your players are also looking at this as saying, man, this dude got 1 year left. I got 5 years left. He ain't going to be here. Like, if this season doesn't start out white hot, if this season starts out 2-2, 3-2, whatever it is, and it's not a dominating fashion, because the Cowboys' schedule next year is going to be difficult. They're going to have one of the most difficult schedules in the season. You can lose players early. And you'll have a short leash, because they aren't committed to you after this. If this thing gets a little bit ugly for the Cowboys early on, the leash could be very short for Mike McCarthy. It can be. And if that happens, yeah, you can go back and say we should have did it in the offseason, whatever it happens. But having a 1 year deal left in your contract, it lends to have a short leash. It does, especially if there's some other hot names that may be available that hasn't signed with the team yet, or maybe a guy or two that they may have wanted. Yeah, that can be a realistic possibility. So there are pros and cons, but I do think that there are more cons. And Mike hasn't lost a lot. I know what a team feels like that lost a locker room. I was a part of a losing locker room for Wade Phillips back in 2010, 2009, 2010, whatever that was, when it all fell apart. against the Green Bay Packers, right? The locker room was lost. And that season wasn't a successful season. So there's a possibility that the locker room can be lost with the coach who has 1 year left on his contract. If you lose the vote of confidence from the players, that's bad. And your season is pretty much sunk at that point in time. And if that's a feeling, and the way that this offseason is going, we'll talk more about that. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for the camaraderie of the guys that's on your roster, the best guys that are on your roster. So, I mean, there's just some pros and cons of what it is for Mike McCarthy to come back. But I think the Cowboys are in, honestly, I do think this is probably the best decision for them. I do. If you weren't going to just scrap the whole thing and go and get coaches who are younger, the retreads won't work. And here, because you have to remember and understand, Bill Belichick, dictator. Jim Harbaugh, dictator. Jim Harbaugh left in the NFL, the Niners, had a good run, but he left because he didn't want to work with the front office anymore. He didn't like that relationship. He wanted more control of what they did. That's why he left the Niners. Him and Trent Baalke, they didn't see eye to eye. They couldn't agree upon things that were happening as far as roster. And then Jim goes to college and he has full autonomy to do what he wants, how he wants, when he wants at the University of Michigan. Now, it may have gotten him in some trouble, suspended 6 games throughout the year for some of the things that happened there that he vehemently denies, but whatever. But there is something to be said about these college coaches like Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh and Dabo Swinney and Kobe Smart. When you're winning and you have full control. Yeah, you have an AD who's a boss, but you tell him what to do or her what to do. You have full outrun of everything. And I don't think Jerry was not going to give that to Bill Belichick, no matter what. He wasn't. He wasn't going to give him full control of the roster. He wasn't going to give him full control to kind of cut and move players the way he wanted to move them. He wasn't. And he isn't doing that to Jim Harbaugh either, at any cost. At any cost. And I told you guys before, everything that Bill Belichick is anti-Dallas Cowboy. Everything that Bill Belichick is about is anti-Dallas Cowboys, anti-Hollywood. This is Hollywood. The Cowboys are Hollywood. Bill Belichick was not going to go for that. Bill Belichick was going to tell the starting players, the big time guys, like, I will bench you. That's not going to play well for Jerry. Like, remember, Bill Belichick benched his best receiver, Wes Welker, in the playoff game because of comments, not because of off the field activities, because of comments that he made that went against the rules that Bill Belichick had laid out. When you're in the media, for Bill Belichick, you talk about yourself, and anybody else that you talk about them in the positive manner. Wes Welker made comments about Rex Ryan's wife's feet, and he got benched for a half in a playoff game. Could you imagine that Bill Belichick benched Micah Parsons for a quarter because of something that he did not do, that he liked? Jerry would dive from the owner's box. Like, what? That would never float. So you have Mike McCarthy. He's here. It is what it is. So if those of you who are still in your emotions and decided you're going to jump ship and never turn back again, fine. There are 31 other teams that you can choose from. Have at it. But eventually they're going to have some issues that you don't like anyway. So it's like anything else. It's all about any relationship that you're in. It's all about what you're willing to tolerate. That's it. There is no perfect relationship. There's none. So whether you want to jump from girl to girl or guy to guy, from girl to girl, if you're a guy, girl to girl, or however you decide. If you're a guy, whatever. But yeah, off that topic. But yeah, there's something that you have to deal with. It's all about what you're willing to deal with.